final presentation will be by Ahmed Shehadi, Nadeem Shehadi. Nadeem Shehadi, he's from the independent think tank Chatham House, so round of applause for this.
I'm going to have an identity crisis by this. I was invited here. It was an offer I could not refuse because, well, I didn't know that I was going to follow Dr. Abdul Wahid. I would have said it's a very hard act to follow, so I would have had hesitations. But a friend of mine from the Ideological Society at Queen Mary proposed my name to Belief and Reason in SOAS. How can one refuse that? But I think this is an instance where probably ideology was wrong, because I was expected to provide some answers. I saw the manifesto of the Belief and Reason Society, and they believe that partial information does not lead to the truth. So they are looking for complete information. And complete information leads to information without doubt. And I would like to instill an element of doubt in the discussion, because there's nothing more dangerous than truth without doubt. And I think we are getting rid of a system where we had truth without doubt in the region, and we're not about to get into another one which will give us a truth based on whatever system of ideas, where we are not allowed to doubt that system. So that, I think, is my main message for the discussion here. Because what I think happened in the region is very simple to understand. It's basically the death of an idea. There is an idea that collapsed, a system of ideas that collapsed, and what follows is that all the institutions and values that are based on this idea will also collapse. We've seen that several times in the history of the Middle East. We've seen that after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, you had someone called Ataturk who rose and thought that all the institutions and values connected to the Ottoman Empire had failed, and that he had to adapt the institutions and values of the West. So this included changing clothes, changing language, changing laws, and introducing an absolute system of secularism which doesn't allow for any diversity in society, which the Ottoman Empire was known for. Now, the rest of the region followed with variations on that theme. Ataturk was, this sort of system of ideas was an inspiration in Iran, in Afghanistan. If you went to any of the capitals of the region in the 30s, you had the same sort of idea of emulating the West in one way or another. Now, that system, which emerged after the collapse of the ideas of the Ottoman Empire, also collapsed after 1948, after it was felt that the regimes that were built on these ideas, on liberal ideas, had failed, and you start having 10, 15 years later, you have colonels in power who are socialist, authoritarian, they're Arab nationalist instead of liberal, and so you have a completely different image coming out from the region. And this also changed after another shock, which was 1967. The failure of that system in 1967 produced the rise of Islamic ideas, where Islam was seen to be the answer. And you have, so if you look at images of the region in the 1980s, 10, 15 years later, that you will see more turbans and more beards and less Western clothes in the imagery. It was a time when, and you see more hijab, of course. This is the. So what I'm trying to tell you is that the change that happens that is triggered by a shock that leads to a change in ideas also triggers a change in institutions, and this is what we're seeing now. The idea of dictatorship somehow, for some reason, collapsed, and a dictator bases his power on us believing that he has power. So a dictator will build his power over 20, 30 years by showing that he's indispensable, that he's irreplaceable, that after him is the worst of deluges, and so we do not have a choice but, if we believe the story, then we follow him and we vote at 97.6% for that dictator. So what I think has happened is that people woke up one day and they stopped believing. So it's a matter of belief, if you like, that there's no more belief, or maybe it's a matter of unbelief. There's less belief in the power of these dictators. There's less belief in a social contract where the population gives up their freedom, where the state and the regime promise to provide you with services, with jobs, with health services, and to liberate your land, and to be the leader, to glorify your nation and all that, and you give up your freedom in return. I think this is what has collapsed, and we will see it collapsing in the region in different ways. And I think it's also part of a global phenomenon. If we look back at what's happening, if we sort of stand back and look at what's happening in the Occupy Wall Street movement in Europe, also in Greece, in all these riots we saw even in London, I think it is the collapse of the idea that the state will provide you with cradle-to-grave economic security and jobs, and you give up some of your freedom in return. And this system has shown to be unviable, and if anything, the next 2 generations will be paying the debt of that idea. And it's an idea that only lasted 30 years or 40 years, maybe. It's a post-World War II idea, and it lasted till probably the mid-80s, and now it's probably dead, because there's no way that the state will provide you with such services in the future. On the contrary, we're seeing that the new contract is that the next generations will be paying for the mistakes of having believed in that. So that's where I want to leave you, that there is an idea that's no longer valid, that we do not know, and this is where I will fail the expectation from the invitation. We do not know what will follow. All we know is that the age of the one-party state, of the one leader, or of the one single idea that will rule us is over. Thank you.